The Baylor Bears are coming to Salt Lake City. It's not officially a Big 12 game, but it's an opportunity to make a statement against a Big 12 opponent. What kind of a threat do the Bears present to Utah? And Utah moved up one spot in the AP poll. Were they fairly ranked? That's what we'll be talking about on today's Locked On Utes.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listen every single day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, and if you're in the market for a second listen, you can check out Locked On College Football or Locked On Big 12. If this is your first time tuning into the show, make sure you like and subscribe. Love interact with all of you in the YouTube comments as well as on social media. We can follow our show at Locked On Utes on X today. Today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. You can visit FanDuel.com to get started. My name is JT Wistrcill, former intern inside the University of Utah Athletic Department. Excited to be joined by Athlon Sports' Elijah Grayson Murry for today's show. We'll be getting to those AP rankings, talking about some of the other player and coach quotes from this week in Utah's media availability. But want to really start with breaking down this Baylor team as they'll be coming up to face the Utes on Saturday it's still so weird that this is a non-conference game, just the wild world of realignment that we live in. But look, this is a Baylor team that's 3-9. Yeah, last year they were 3-9. They beat up on Tarleton State, and there were aspects of the game that looked impressive, aspects of them that did not look impressive. But if Utah goes out there and executes, they should have no problem with this Bears team. If this Utah team is one of the 12 best, I think they're easily one of the 10 best. I expect a dominant win by Utah. There's a reason the line from our friends at FanDuel is at 14 currently, Elijah.
Yeah, and this Baylor team, they are definitely more experienced this year. It's going to be a tougher game than last year. But when you look at how much Utah has improved and what they showed against, Southern Utah University, is like, how do you stop them? You could be a much improved team and having faced the team, having faced Utah last year, but it's not the same team you face. I guess that's the case for both ways, but Utah's team going into this matchup is way better than, I guess both teams have improved, but Utah's improvement has been levels above, a lot of teams in college football.
It has been. And yeah, the addition of, or just the getting back Cam Rising and Brant Kuithe and Mekhi Bernard, just makes a world of a difference because Andy Ludwig can call games to win now. He's not calling games to make sure Utah doesn't lose. Last year, Utah constantly played not to lose. This year, they're playing to win, and that's definitely going to be the case against this Baylor team. Baylor defensively, offensively is where they're really different because they brought in Daquan Finn, the Toledo transfer. MAC Player of the Year comes in. We'll talk about him in a moment, but I think defensively is where they have some similarities to the team that they were last year because they have a decent number of returning starters, but those returning starters last year gave up 421 yards per game. That's good for 113. That sandwich between Southern Mississippi and Memphis. So their defense still has a lot of work to do. Their pass rush looked better against Tarleton than last year, but that's against Tarleton. Right. So this will be a better challenge for Utah than it was facing against Southern Utah. And the Utah offensive line had some up and down moments. So that will be a good test for them. But one, I still expect the Utah offensive line to take care of business. Baylor's linebackers are solid. Maybe that's the best part of their defense. I'm not impressed with their secondary. Their secondary is where I think Utah really has a chance to take advantage of. I think there will be big play opportunities for Money Parks, Brant Kuithe yet again, Dorian Singer breaking a few. Would love to see Damian Alford getting involved in this one. I expect another big game for Cam Rising passing wise. I think there could be some times where Cam is under duress, and I'm not expecting Utah to throw up 30 points in the first half like they did against Southern Utah, but I would be surprised if Utah didn't have 2 touchdowns on the board by the time halftime rolls around, because I do think they are clearly better than this Baylor defense.
Right. And I'm also, I'm not expecting Cam to be as loose with his running. I know Whittingham said that he made some smart decisions after looking at the tape, but, he's assuming that he plays the full game. It's not going to be a Isaac Wilson coming in the second half and getting some, getting his feet wet type of situation. I don't think so. But I wouldn't expect Cam to be as loose with his running decisions. I think he'll be a bit more conservative. I still think he will run because obviously that's just Cam, and he's a competitive guy. But I think that is going to be toned down a bit. I think Singer will hopefully get involved in the game more. And like you said, hopefully we'll see Alford become a bigger part of the game plan. I really think they're going to target the pass game just because their Baylor secondary is not, anything to really be scared of or to avoid. It'd be also nice to kind of see the running game go, but establishing the passing game with some more, better, bigger targets, I think that's kind of key heading into our away stretch.
Yeah, I think it absolutely is, and I'm excited to see Utah involve those guys shifting to the other side of the ball. This is where Utah really has an advantage because yes, the game against Tarleton for Baylor, it was 45-3, but this is still Daquan Finn turned it over twice. Neither interception was good. The first one was just stared at the guy, rolled out, didn't even see the defensive back in front of him. Second one was in the second half, and he just kind of chucked it up there, and it was kind of another one of those questionable decisions. So I will say their receivers can make plays downfield. There's going to be some 50-50 balls. Their guys can come down with them. We saw we got Miles Battle last year lose one of those situations, nearly ended up costing Utah the game. So they have receivers there's going to be a couple big pass plays in this game. I expect there to be some 20-yard gains at various points. But also last year, Utah would give up some yards through the air, and they always bowed up in the red zone. I expect that to be the case when they go against this Bears team this year. And one thing to know about Daquan Finn too, he's incredibly athletic. And we saw early in the game, Southern Utah had some nice plays with their quarterback running. That is something Utah has to be and definitely will be aware of. I think Daquan Finn's greatest threat to Utah is with his legs, not his arm. Utah's goal should be to contain him in the pocket because when he scrambles and gets loose, that's when things can be in trouble. They want to do all kind of options, RPOs, normal read option, because they want to get Daquan out and running and just give him the opportunity to do multiple things. I like this Bears offense. I think it's taken a step forward with Finn. But Finn is willing to turn than what they had last year with Sawyer Robertson. This is not going to be a 3-9 football team, but you don't go from being a 3-9 football team to a team that wins in Rice-Eccles Stadium. This team does not have anything in common with Oregon outside of the fact that they both wear green, even though it is a different shade of green, obviously. But to me, for Utah, it's just contained Daquan Finn will be the biggest thing. I also think that their left tackle is not quick-footed, so I think there'll be opportunities for Connor O'Toole to get home a couple of times. Their offensive line does not impress me that much. Their running game is subpar. I think Utah has a great chance to hold Baylor under 15 points in this one.
Oh, yeah, I 100% agree. Containing Finn is probably the biggest focus for the defense because he is so athletic. And you mentioned, how their receivers can win some 50-50 balls. And it's going to be interesting to see what the cornerback room kind of looks like with Johnson out for the year. Elijah Davis, he had a pretty good performance stepping in for Johnson against SUU. And with Cam Calhoun supposedly coming back this week, I think it'll be interesting to see how that dynamic works. I think it will work. Obviously, they're both super talented guys. But yeah, containing Finn has got to be the number one priority. And I think if you do that, you can, there's no reason for them to score more than like 14 points. I think throwing 2 interceptions against Tarleton State is not ideal. And going up against a much better overall defense, it's not going to. It shouldn't look pretty for Baylor.
If the over-under on turnovers was 2.5 for Baylor, I would take the over. I think Quinn is going to struggle in this one. I'm not saying he will have all 3 turnovers. I think there's a world where he has all 3. There's a strong possibility he throws multiple interceptions. We'll see if it reaches the number 3, but I expect Utah's front 7 to once again shine in this game. I think Cam Rising will silence his critics. Weirdly, there's critics and pushbacks to how he played last week because he wasn't flawless. I'm sorry he wasn't 15 out of 15. He was just 10 for 15. But either way, I think Cam will continue to shake off a little bit of that rust we did see and just continue to look like one of the best quarterbacks in not just the Big 12, but I truly believe in the country. So I'm feeling good about this Utah matchup with Baylor, and it's because Utah is one of the best teams in college football. I'm not just saying that. AP poll agrees with me. The rankings are in. Utah was able to climb up in the AP poll, but did the AP poll get it right? I don't think so. That's what we're going to be talking about in one moment. But first, want to take an opportunity to talk with you all on Locked On Utes about our great friends at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. And eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered with over 122 million parts. That's right, over 122 million parts. Your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. You keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Also want to remind everyone about something fun we have going on the Locked On College Football Network, and that is just on the Locked On Network, and that is Locked On College Football, as well as we do have our fun preview shows we do each week. All the Big 12 hosts get together, had some fun discussions about Cam Rising this week, so make sure you guys check it out. That will be dropping on Thursday. But what dropped today was the AP poll, or I should say yesterday by the time this show is releasing. The AP poll is out. Utah moved up a spot. That was expected. Thanks, Florida State. So Utah is now at 11, and the teams ahead of them are Georgia, Ohio State, Texas, Alabama, Notre Dame, Ole Miss, Oregon, Penn State, Missouri, and Michigan. Most of those teams I do not have an issue with. I will say, like, if this was strictly grading based on, like, how teams looked in the first week and not taking into factor preseason rankings, and that becomes a slippery slope because you could say, well, Utah didn't play this impressive team. We could do that whole thing. But like Oregon obviously did not impress with Idaho. Shout out Big Sky for nearly getting that one done. But they didn't impress me that much. But I'm fine with them being ahead. Really, everyone on here I'm mostly fine with, except the Michigan Wolverines. I do believe Utah should be ahead of Michigan. Utah has so much returning talent. The coach, the quarterback that made them great, all of these key pieces that were part of their success as a team. Michigan has a few returners, but they lost so much, and they do not have a quarterback, and that showed against Fresno State. They barely squeaked that one out. That one was close for a while. Maybe barely's a little harsh because the final score ended up being a little different. But that game was way too close for most of it. I believe Michigan showed enough to drop them outside of the top 10. I would move Utah up a spot. Outside of that, Elijah, I don't really have any issue with the AP rankings.
Yeah, neither do I. And the USA Today coaches poll also has Utah at 11, moving them up 2 spots from 13. So it's clear that the voters are taking notice of Utah early on, which is really good. For further down the line, if the team is in a position to push for the college football playoff. As an Ohio State fan from birth, I think Michigan should be the last team in the entire nation. So I definitely 100% agree with you, though. No bias. I think Utah should be above Michigan. Their quarterback is not J.J. McCarthy. Their offense is not the same as it was last year. Pretty much the whole team isn't. And you'd expect some regression, obviously losing that much talent, but I think they're only surviving off of last year's successes. I think it'll quickly show further down the line once they play better opponents that they aren't the team that, everyone was kind of hoping that they'd be following a championship run. And I think Utah will probably pass up Michigan should they handle Baylor pretty easily. I would expect us to pass up Michigan by week 3.
I feel like that's what's going to end up shaking out too, but either way, no major gripes with the latest
Right.
AP poll.
Yeah.
We were just talking about Michigan. There's a Michigan guy who's kind of a big talk of the town right now for Utah, and that's Cameron Calhoun, who's been gearing his way back up from injury. You mentioned Elijah Davis earlier, but Calhoun is another guy that it feels like is going to see a lot of opportunities here with Johnson, unfortunately, going out. And he's a guy, 4-star talent, I feel good about. I know and trust Morgan Scalley and Sharif Shaw. So whoever they put out there, I have confidence is going to do a good job. And Cameron, Elijah, you got the opportunity to speak with Cameron earlier today in Utah's media availability. What were some of your takeaways from talking with him?
He seems ready. He seems prepared. He complimented a lot more on the other cornerbacks in the room. He was very high on Smith Snowden, and he had a lot of good things to say about Elijah Davis. And so we kind of had to bring it back on the focus to him. But it's always good to see, your arguably best cornerback kind of hype up the entire cornerback room heading in, to the next week. I think he's 100% healthy. That's what he seems like. I think he's going to be an instant impact guy. And, in the spring game, he made an instant impact and everyone noticed. And I think that's going to be how it is this Saturday as well.
Yeah, I'm excited to see him get more opportunities too. You got to talk with a lot of the guys on this Utah team. Was there anything that maybe flew under the radar or really stood out to you about this week's media availability from all the coaches and players that we got to speak to?
So Dijon Stanley, that kid, he's a great guy. And I think his role is going to be increased as the weeks go on.
Great.
Obviously we don't know how it's going to be increased because you can't just want to reel route every play and expect it to be a touchdown. But I do think that his role will be increased, and I think he might be the most electric player on the entire team. He's kind of like our Deebo Samuel in a way. He can go through the ground and through the air and make an instant impact in either way. Caleb Lohner, I think he is also going to see an increased role, especially in the end zone. I mean, the guy is 6'8". He makes me look small, and I'm 6'3". So he's a great. He's also a great guy. He was like, I'm learning more every day. Every practice, I feel like I'm getting better. Obviously that drop touchdown was kind of, but he redeemed himself, and I think while we were expecting, a lot of Landon King in the end zone, I think Lohner might be the guy that that is the target up there, because who's gonna cover him? That's almost impossible.
Yeah, that'll be the interesting battle. Is Lohner, the way he's built? He was even better in that game than I thought he did more in that game than I thought he would show on the entire season. And that's nothing against Caleb Lohner. That's how good Utah's tight end room was. So very curious to see how his role gets expanded. Landon King was in more than I thought he was looking back on the game. So I feel like he has to still be involved a lot on this team, but there are so many tight ends that Utah has got to try to feed, and receivers as well factored in. So it's going to be quite the uphill battle that Utah has. And the guy who's going to be doing that is Cam Rising. Cam Rising also spoke to the media. So we're going to be talking about what we learned from Cam's latest media availability in one moment. But first, we have to talk with you all about our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel lately, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we got something a little different. For now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can get a $5 bet and just make that $5 bet and get a 3-week free trial for NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. That's right, football is back. And then with your YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. This is at FanDuel.com to download America's #1 sportsbook today. And if you were looking at some games to potentially bet on, I would recommend heading over to the Utah Utes. We already mentioned that line. Utah favored by 2 touchdowns still. I'm feeling good about this line as it relates to Utah right now. I just think they're clearly better than Baylor. We'll continue to talk about and break it down on the show this week. But there's also the NFL action is back. College football is in full swing. There's lots to check out at FanDuel today. So make sure you guys visit FanDuel.com to check out all of the latest lines on your favorite America's sportsbook. All right, Elijah, we got a chance to hear from Cam Rising this week. How were your biggest takeaways from hearing him? How was it for him shaking off the rust, getting back at it?
he seemed, very excited, just to be able to rekindle that connection with Kuithe. But my biggest takeaway is that he does not regret running the ball at all. He was like, I'm competitive. This is what I'm going to do, and I think Whittingham might have to reel that back, which I think he will, now that Cam will most likely have to play all 4 quarters. But I think it's a good sign for, the team and for fans, knowing that when it's needed, Rising will run and he will get positive yards, and he's not afraid to take contact either. Obviously, every time he's going to take contact, we're going to shrivel up a little bit and be like, "Oh, please!" But no, he's 100%, healthy. He just had, I think he had to shake off the rust a little bit and at the start of the SU game, but clearly he was fine. He scored the most touchdowns ever. Yeah. And first time since 2008, when a Utah quarterback had 5 touchdowns in a half. And he also passed up Alex Smith on the all-time Utah quarterback. And so that's like coming back and doing all that in one night. That's one way to announce that you're back. And I think he is. He's in good hopes, and he's gonna just continue doing that against Baylor. I think there's nothing that I'm worried about going forward with him.
I'm not worried either. And one thing I'm really excited to see Elijah too is a Utah football game on a Saturday where the crowd is always good. The crowd is always good for Utah. It's so different when like it's an FCS opponent. Like Utah could play with no fans in the stands and they're beating Southern Utah. No matter the circumstance, Utah's beating Southern Utah. This is an opportunity where it's like, hey, first Big 12 game. Once again, I know non-conference game, but either way, Big 12 game. I think that Rice Eccles is going to be rocking this Saturday. I'm excited to see Cam go out there and take the field again for the first time on a Saturday. Yeah. What kind of an atmosphere are you expecting? And what do you think if you had to give a prediction, what do you think this game is going to look like score-wise?
Man, I think, I think Baylor will be obviously a tougher opponent than SEU.
I would agree.
But I think it will be Utah by 3 touchdowns. I'm not expecting a complete explosion just because of the fact that it is a better opponent. And while they say they're not necessarily treating it like a Big 12 game, I think they still will, just because, why not? You add that extra layer onto it to make sure that you're on your A game. I think Dorian Singer will get involved a lot more. I think he only had like 3 catches against SEU. And so if you want to get your best target, and Whittingham, called him the best hands that the program has ever had. So when you have that talent, you want to get them involved. And I think you want to get them involved early rather than later, especially on the road, going into Utah State and Oklahoma State. That's not easy. Nowhere on the road is easy, but no, I think the big names are going to get involved. I expect more trick plays with Dijon Stanley, and I expect Cam Calhoun to make an impact right off the bat.
I like it. I'm expecting a big performance out of Utah too. Elijah, correct me if I'm wrong, but you had big hopes for Dorian Singer this season too, right? So we need him to.
Yes,
if we want those to come through, we need him to rack up those receiving yards, don't we?
Yeah, please. At least 200 this game. I need it.
Yeah. Elijah predicted it was a Blitnikoff, correct?
Yes.
For best receiver. Yeah, Blitnikoff for Dorian Singer. I thought he looked good last week. And I mean, when Dijon Stanley's doing what Dijon Stanley's doing, there's only going to be so many opportunities for other people.
Right.
And the last thing I'll mention very briefly. I'm so excited that Dijon Stanley did what he did, not only for his own benefit, but I think he can just be used for the betterment of this offense as a decoy now as well. He will still be involved. Do not make that mistake. But when he is in motion, the defense's ears are going to perk up. And the things that they can do, especially fresh off what I expect to be his best performance of the season, just from the sheer volume and the opponent, I think that Utah's going to have a lot of fun. Andy Ludwig will drawing up some misdirection type of things for him. So excited to see what Stanley will do. This Utah team will be back soon. But as we do gear up for the game, Elijah, if people want more Utah content, whether it be interviews as well as articles, where should they head over to?
Yeah, so my Twitter or my X account is right down below, Elijah G. Murray. I post all player interviews from practice. I post Coach Whittingham interviews. Obviously, I write articles for Athlon Sports, covering pretty much all Utah athletics, but obviously right now with football season as the main focus. So, you can follow me for all updates, all the latest news. And I've actually gained a lot of followers recently because of the practice videos. So, I'm glad people are enjoying it. But yeah, it's been a blast, and I'm so happy football is fully back in swing, and hopefully the season will not be ending anytime soon for the Utes.
No, I don't think it will either, my friend. I'm excited what they'll be able to do. Keep crushing it with the content. You always crush it when you come on here. Thanks again, Elijah.
Thank you. I appreciate it anytime.
That's going to do it for today's edition of Locked On Utes. Our first real crossover of the season with another Locked On host will be tomorrow. Cam Stewart of Locked On Baylor will be joining me. We have a fun discussion previewing this week's game. If you want to learn more about the Bears and how tomorrow's game will play out with someone that's going to be rooting for one on the opposite sideline, make sure you guys check that episode out. Big thanks to Elijah again for joining us today, and we'll see you on tomorrow's Locked On Utes.